Hello, bookworms! Welcome to the Bonified Bookworm. And if you're here, you are here to read along with me and hopefully improve your English. So today, I want to start out by giving a quick book review. This is similar to the book review that I gave on Jackie Davis's Underpants and Overbites, which I hope I didn't flip that. Sometimes I do. This is someone that I have followed online because I like his artwork, and it's called Big Panda and Tiny Dragon by James Norbury. And it just has little sayings inside of it with the artwork. So for example, this says, "How is that tree still standing?" asked Tiny Dragon. "During better times," said Big Panda, "it grew deep roots. Now it can weather any storm." And so there's his art with the drawing. There's another one that I really like in here where, which I hope you can see the tiny dragon. He really is very tiny. He's right there beside the panda. You might almost think he's just part of the tree. And here he is there. There's one in particular he has similar to this drawing, and it says something like, "Where are we going?" And either panda or dragon says, "It doesn't matter as long as I'm with you," or something similar to that. But we might actually read this one together because it's kind of short and it's just sweet and I just love it. Might be the same with Jackie's book too, because I love that one too. I really am drawn to, I guess, I would almost say graphic novels, which I do enjoy graphic novels and manga and all that, but I just enjoy art and the stories that they put into them. Like, I don't know what this falls under really. I'll have to research that. So anyway, moving along. We are, of course, reading Touching the Void by Joe Simpson. And we left off on page 78, and we were reading from Simon's point of view as he was watching Joe struggle to try to continue to climb, to show that he could climb, and basically, hey, don't leave me. So we're picking back up on page 78, and it's flipping back to Joe's perspective. Simon suddenly appeared at my side. I had been unable to watch him climbing the crest. I felt sure he would fall. Instead, I thought I had better try to get moving. I knew I would never get over the rise, so I began to contour it. I didn't think of the consequences. I had seen Simon struggling on the powder. Progress was slow and tiring, but I was so focused in on moving carefully that I could ignore much of the pain. It became one more difficulty to contend with, and merged with all the other problems: balance, the snow conditions, and one-leggedness. A pattern of movements developed after my initial wobbly hops, and I meticulously repeated the pattern. Each pattern made up one step across the slope, and I began to feel detached from everything around me. I thought of nothing but the patterns. Only once did I stop and glance back at Simon. He seemed to be on the very point of falling, and I looked away quickly. I could see the endless fall of the east face beneath my feet. It was tempting to think I could survive falling down it, yet I knew that despite there being evenly angled snow all the way, the speed of the fall would rip me to shreds long before I reached the bottom. I thought of falling down it anyway, but it meant nothing to me. I felt no fright at the idea. It seemed such an obvious and unavoidable fact. It was academic, really. I knew I was done for. It would make no difference in the long run. Simon climbed past me and began stamping a trench across the slope until he had gone out of sight round the curve of the slope. He said he was going ahead to see what lay around the corner. Neither of us discussed what we were going to do. I don't think we thought there was anything, so I got back into my patterns. The trench made it easier, but it still needed total attention. It struck me that we were both avoiding the issue. For over 2 hours, we had acted as if nothing had happened. We had a silent agreement. It needed time to work itself out. We both knew the truth. It was very simple. I was injured and unlikely to survive. Simon could get down alone. While I waited on his actions, it felt as if I was holding something terrifyingly fragile and precious. If I asked Simon to help, I might lose this precious thing. He might leave me. I remained silent, but it was no longer for fear of losing control. I felt coldly rational. The patterns merged into automatic rhythm. I was surprised to hear Simon ask if I was all right. I had forgotten about him and had no idea how long I had been repeating the patterns. I had almost forgotten why I was doing them. I looked up and saw Simon sitting in the snow watching me. I smiled at him, and he returned a lopsided sort of grin which failed to mask his anxiety. He sat overlooking the slope, running down the side of the rise round which we had contoured. Behind him, I could see the crest of the ridge. "I can see the coal," he said, and I felt a surge of hope run through me, like a cold wind. "Is it clear? Is it a straight slope down?" I asked, trying to keep the edge of excitement from my voice. "More or less." I hurried my pattern moves and at the same time tried not to rush. Suddenly, I was scared of the drop below. I could see myself trembling and realized that if I had felt like this when I had set out, I would never have got to this point. When I reached him, I slumped against the snow. Simon put his hand on my shoulder. How are you doing?" "It's better. Painful, but I felt small and useless telling him. His concern scared me, and I was unsure what was behind it. Perhaps he wanted to break the news to me softly. "I've had it, Simon. I can't see myself getting down at this rate." If I expected an answer, I didn't get one. I felt melodramatic to have voiced it, and he ignored the implied question. He began untying the ropes from his harness. I looked down to the coal. It was about 600 feet below us and slightly to the right. Without thinking, I began to work out possible ways of getting to it. To descend directly to the coal would be very difficult, since it meant a diagonal descent across the angle of the slope. It would have to be straight down and then horizontally across to the coal. The traverse appeared shorter than the slope I had just crossed. "Do you think you can hold my weight in the snow?" I asked. We had no snow stakes left. If Simon took my weight on the rope, he would have to do so standing on the loose open slope with no anchors. "If we dig a big bucket seat, I should be able to hold you. If it starts to collapse, I can always shout and you can take your weight off." "Okay, it'd be quicker if you lowered me on 2 ropes tied together." He nodded in agreement. Already he had begun to dig out his belay seat. I grabbed the 2 ropes, knotted them together, and tied myself into the free end. The other end was already attached to Simon's harness. In effect, we were now roped together with one 300-foot line, which would have the time spent digging belay seats and double the distance lowered. Simon could control the speed of my descent by using a belay plate, and so reduce any sudden jerks of weight and avoid having the rope run away from him if he couldn't get a grip on it with his frozen mitts. The one problem was the knot joining the 2 ropes. The only way to get past the belay plate would be by disconnecting the rope from the plate and then reconnecting it with the knot on the other side. This would be possible only if I stood up and took my weight off the rope. I thank my stars that I hadn't broken both legs. "Okay, you ready?" Simon, seated in the deep hole he had dug in the slope with his legs braced hard into the snow. He held the belay plate locked off with the rope to me taut between us. "Yes, now take it steady. If anything slips, yell." "Don't worry, I will. If you can't hear me when the knot comes up, I'll tug the rope 3 times. "Right." I lay on my chest immediately beneath Simon and edged down until all my weight was on the rope. Initially, I couldn't commit myself to letting my feet hang free of the snow. If the seat crumbled straight away, we would be falling instantaneously. Simon nodded at me and grinned. Encouraged by his confidence, I lifted my feet and began to slide down. It worked. He let the rope out smoothly in a steady descent. I lay against the snow, holding an axe in each hand, ready to dig them in the moment I felt a fall begin. Occasionally, the crampons on my right boot snagged in the snow and jarred my leg. I tried not to cry out, but failed. I didn't want Simon to stop. In a surprisingly short time, he did stop. I looked up and saw that he had receded far from me, and I could make out only his head and shoulders leaning out from the seat in the snow. He shouted something, but I couldn't make it out until 3 sharp tugs explained it. After the endless time traversing the rise, I was astounded at the speed at which I had descended 150 feet. Astounded and pleased as punch. I wanted to giggle. In so short a time, my mood had swung from despair to wild optimism, and death rushed back to being a vague possibility rather than the inevitable fact. The rope went slack as I hopped up on my good leg. I was acutely aware that while Simon was changing the knot over, we were at our most vulnerable. If I fell, I would drop a whole rope's length before it became tight onto him, and he would be whipped off the mountain by the impact. I dug my axes in and stayed motionless. I could see the coal below and to my right, already a lot closer. More tugs on the rope, and I carefully leant my body down the slope at the second half of the lower began. I waved up at the distant red and blue dot above me and saw him stand up out of the seat. He turned and faced into the slope and began kicking his feet into the snow. The rope curled down past me. Simon was on his way down. I turned and started to excavate another seat. I dug deep into the slope, making a hole that he could sit completely inside. I curved the back wall and the floor so that it rose up to the lip of the hole. When satisfied, I looked back up to see Simon back climbing quickly towards me. The next lowering was much quicker. We had adopted an efficient system. One shadow lay over our building optimism: the weather. It had deteriorated rapidly, clouds flitting across the coal and a great mass of cloud rolling up in the east. The wind was increasing steadily, blowing powder snow across the slope. I could see plumes of snow streaming horizontally out over the west face. As the wind grew, so the temperature dropped. I could feel it burning into my face, numbing my chin and nose. My fingers began to freeze. Simon joined me at the end of the second lowering. We were almost level with the coal, but there was a horizontal traverse to be made to get to its edge. I'll go ahead and make a trench. He didn't wait for an answer, and I felt exposed as I watched him move away from me. It looked a long way to the coal. I wondered whether to unrope. I didn't want to, even though logic told me the rope wouldn't save me now. If I fell, it would take Simon with me, but I couldn't bring myself to dispense with the comforting reassurance of the rope. I glanced at Simon. I couldn't believe it. He had reached the coal, yet he was only about 80 feet from me. The late afternoon light had disguised the distance. "Come on," he shouted above the rope. "Come on," he shouted above the wind. "I've got the rope." There was a gentle tug at my waist. He had taken in the remaining slack and intended belaying me. I thought that he meant to jump down the west side if I fell. There was no other way of stopping me. I hobbled sideways and nearly lost balance as I snagged my foot. Something gristly twisted in my knee, and the shock had me sobbing. It eased away, and I swore at myself for not concentrating. The crabbed sideways pattern of movement, which I had tried before, took over once more. When I couldn't swing my leg across, I reached down and hefted it along the trench Simon had forged, and then returned to my patterns. The leg had become inanimate, a weighty, useless object. If it got in my way or pained me, I cursed it and hefted it aside as if it were a chair I'd tripped over. The coal was exposed and windy, but for the first time we could see clearly down the west flank of the mountain. Directly beneath us, the glacier we had walked up 5 days ago curved away towards the moraines and crevices which led to base camp, nearly 3,000 feet below us. It would take many long lowerings, but it was all downhill, and we had lost the sense of hopelessness that invaded us up the ice cliff. Reaching the coal had been crucial. If there had been any steep ground between the cliff and the coal, we would never have got past it. "What time is it?" Simon asked. "Just gone 4. We don't have much time, do we?" I could see him weighing up the possibilities. The face below the coal was running with spindrift, and the cloud buildup was nearly complete. It was hard to judge whether it had started snowing because of the powder being swept against us by the wind. Oh, that was a weird sentence. It was hard to judge whether it started snowing because of the powder being swept against us by the wind. We hadn't sat in the cold for very long, yet already I was numb with cold. I wanted to carry on down, but it was Simon's decision. I waited for him to make up his mind. "I think we should keep moving," he said at last. Will you be all right?" "Yes, let's go, I'm freezing." "Me too, my hands have gone again." "We could snowhole if you like." "No, we won't reach the glacier in the light, but it's a clear slope down. Better to lose height." "Right, I don't like the look of this weather. That's what worries me." "Okay, I'll lower you from here. We should go down further to the right, but I don't think you will be able to make it diagonally. We'll just have to take our chances straight down." I slid off the crest of the ridge and down the west face. Simon stood back from the edge, bracing himself against my weight. The first of many powder avalanches rushed over me, tugging me down. I slid faster and shouted to Simon to slow down, but he couldn't hear me. And we're going to stop there. Page 84, going into chapter 6. Oh, and I wanted to apologize. I had recorded for Thursday last week, and then I didn't upload it. So that's why I uploaded it on Tuesday, even though it was for Thursday, because I realized I'd edited it and everything, but then I didn't actually upload it to YouTube. So yeah, I'll just keep trying. I'll get better. I hope y'all have a great day. I still don't have a fancy catchphrase, so hope you have a great day, great week, and hope you come back here. Have a great day.